Hello, you beautiful people. Today we're back with 5 trades you need to make before fantasy playoffs. So as always, if you enjoy the content, feel free to drop a like on the video and subscribe so you get notifications for all the future videos. And with that being said, let's start with the first trade. So the first trade that I think you need to make before fantasy playoffs involves Kawhi Leonard. And the same sort of thing could be said for Paul George, and it's mainly due to the Clippers' fantasy playoff schedule. Now, I'm going under the impression that your playoffs are week 17, 18, and 19, because that's what it is in most leagues, but yeah, anyway, if we look at the Clippers playoff schedule, in all of those 3 weeks, they play only 3 games. And if you're going into the finals weeks, you need your guys that are going to perform well, and you're going to need at least 1 week with 4 games, especially if it's like the finals week. So yeah, if they're only playing 3 games each week, even though they're really talented, really good fantasy players, if they're not going to be playing 4 games in any of the 3 weeks, then you can really sort of send these guys off as a sort of poison pill to another good team in your league, and then maybe trade for someone that has a more advantageous fantasy playoff schedule. So yeah, again, nothing against Kawhi or Paul George as fantasy players. They're both great options to have. But if we're just looking at their fantasy schedule, objectively, if they're both only going to play 3 games, there's plenty more valuable options that are going to be playing like 4 games in those weeks, at least once. So yeah, that's the first trade that you're going to make. If you have Kawhi on your team, I don't really think there's any player that's off limits in the league in terms of like trade value for him. You could probably get anyone you wanted. If you wanted to go after like a Harden, Luka, Giannis type of player, then you could probably include like a lesser piece with Kawhi, and you might be able to pull off a trade like that. That's going to be one of the harder trades to pull off if you're just going for like one of those top 3 guys. Oh, kind of, maybe I forgot Jokic there. Throwing Jokic as well. He'd be a difficult trade to pull off, but other than that, I think if you can get any top 10 player for Kawhi that has a more advantageous playoff schedule, I'd definitely go ahead and make that trade. So the next trade you need to make involves Zach Levine, and I just want to put a disclaimer out. If you have Zach Levine on your team, do not trade him. I've seen so many idiotic things saying like, oh, Vucevic is on the team now, he's not going to be able to perform, he's not the number 1 option anymore. Zach Levine is still the number 1 option on this team. He's going to have the ball in his hands plenty of time. Vucevic is going to help space the floor for him, and his numbers aren't going to be affected that much. He's just on a bit of a cold stretch right now. Like, he's obviously playing through an injury as well. But if you have Zach Levine on your team, do not trade him under any circumstances. You're not going to be able to get significant value in return for him. Not as much as you should be able to anyway, at the very least. But yeah, if someone has Zach Levine on their team, they're definitely panicking if they're not too in tune with how fantasy works. So I'd definitely go ahead and take advantage of that and try to trade for him. But again, if Zach Levine is on your team, don't trade him away. It's just not worth it for you. And he's going to bounce back very soon. I'm almost certain of it. So yeah, I would definitely keep hold of Zach Levine. He's going to be really good come playoff time as the Bulls are competing for a playoff spot. He's just a really valuable player to have, and his value is not as high as it should be on the trade market right now. Just want to say a quick apology to all my homies whose trade deadlines have already passed. I tried to get this video out sooner, but got busy, so I'm making it now. If your trade deadline already passed, good luck in your fantasy playoffs. I'll make some videos on how to work the waiver wire and stuff to help you win that, but in terms of trades, we'll just go back into the next player on my list, and it's going to be Bradley Beal. And similarly to Zach Levine, if Bradley Beal is on your team, just don't trade him. Like, he is like the leading scorer in the league this year, and he's had a few cold games, and now he's injured. And if you're someone that's going to panic and trade him, then you clearly don't really know what you're doing, and someone's just trying to take advantage of you. So I would not trade Bradley Beal under any circumstance. You're not going to be able to get significant recompensation for him, and it's just not worth it. I would much rather have Bradley Beal on my team than any trade package you could probably get for him right now. So yeah, I definitely hold on to Bradley Beal come playoff time. Similar situation to the Bulls. Like, the Wizards are going to be competing for a play-in spot, and that's going to force Bradley Beal to play a lot of games, and his playoff schedule is pretty decent as well. So definitely hold on to Bradley Beal if he's on your team, and if someone has him, good time to try to buy low on him as well. Like just pretty much the vice versa of what I said if he's on your team. If he's not on your team, go ahead and try to buy low on Bradley Beal. Again, it's not going to cost you a lot right now just because he is facing a slight injury and he has had a few bad games, so definitely something to try to take advantage of. So if you made it this far into the video, then you're clearly interested in fantasy basketball, so I'd highly recommend joining the Discord through the link in the description. It's a great place if you want to talk about any waiver wire pickups, trade questions, player suggestions, anything fantasy related, honestly, so definitely recommend checking that out through the link in the description if it sounds like something you'd be interested in. But anyway, we're just going to go ahead and move on to the next player that I think you should trade, and it's going to be Donovan Mitchell. And Donovan Mitchell is someone that if he's on your team, I would trade him away because I think it's a great time to sell high on Dono. I mean, he's been on absolute fire. Like, last week he was arguably like the best player in fantasy. And if we look at his percentages, they're way up from what they usually are in the regular season. He's just shooting the lights out, honestly, and I don't think it's sustainable. In fact, I'm almost certain it's not. So I think it's a great time to sell high on Donovan Mitchell, especially before playoffs. You can definitely get a significant asset in return for Dono, and I definitely recommend doing that if I was you. Like, if he was on my team, I'd definitely trade him away. I don't know what exactly you could get in return, but with the week he just had, if someone has some recency bias, you definitely could pull off a trade for someone like Sabonis or Jason Tatum. And I'd rather have Sabonis or Tatum over Donovan Mitchell just because I don't trust his efficiency. He has improved a lot this year, don't get me wrong, but I'd just rather have a more solid option like Sabonis or Tatum. And then the last trade I think you need to make before playoffs involves De'Aaron Fox. And I would try to trade De'Aaron Fox away as fast as you could. He just came off of an absolutely ridiculous 5-game stretch where he was putting up just insane fantasy numbers. And I think it's a great time to sell high on him. This is like the peak of the value that you're going to be able to get in return for De'Aaron Fox. And I just think that's something you're definitely going to want to capitalize before playoffs rolls around. Like I said, if you do keep him, it's not a bad option, but I just think there's no way his production doesn't dip back down to more of a regular standard for him. And I would just rather have someone that's a better player overall if I could get it for him. So yeah, if I'm trading De'Aaron Fox, I'm looking for like maybe a top 20 guy if you threw in like a small piece with De'Aaron Fox. And with that being said, I think that's going to wrap up the video. These are just trades that I think you guys should seriously consider making before going into playoffs if your trade deadline hasn't passed yet. Playoffs is coming around very soon, and these are just guys that you're either going to want to trade away because of their schedules, or you're going to want to go ahead and trade for them if you can get them at a discounted price. And yeah, with that being said, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this helped you guys out. Hope you enjoyed, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.